Let's just admit it. The Sun Belt blew it with their scheduling crossovers. It's Locked On Sun Belt.
You are Locked On Sun Belt, your daily podcast on the Sun Belt Conference, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On Sun Belt, your teams every day. Today's episode brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. We will get to the overall schedule and crossovers in the second and third segment, but we got to talk about just the blatant scheduling missed opportunity that the Sun Belt had in 2025. And obviously most scheduling for college football is done, I think, way in advance. Those things seem to be less in advance with all of the shuffling of the college conferences, but a lot of these things are done in advance. All right. We can go back and find out when that Mississippi State game was scheduled to go to Hattiesburg. I don't think either of the current coaches were coaching at their current schools when that deal was made. I'm not sure that the two previous coaches were coaching at the two schools when that deal was made. But when you have an opportunity, so the point is, I don't know how far in advance you need for the Sun Belt schedule to be made in advance. Also, something that I didn't realize, I'd have to go back and look. I didn't. How often? Because a lot of these teams are playing, and we'll go over this again. It just seems like I didn't realize this. Like the Cajuns have Marshall and JMU. Texas State have Marshall and JMU. I didn't get that. Like, I didn't realize that was a thing. So some of these teams are doubled up. So I didn't get that. So I think there's another one that's doubled up like that. So I didn't get that. So I didn't know how far in advance these things are. But one of my, cliche sayings is life is about making the adjustments. And, technically this was announced, it was last week, January 9th. Sorry that we're just getting to that on the 14th. But that's more than a month since this whole Charles Huff to Southern Miss instant content creating more than 150 subscribers to Locked On Sunbelt. Fun stuff happened. Since the move from Marshall to Southern Miss happened. And why would you not have Southern Miss and Marshall play? As my guy from Sunbelt Syndicate had mentioned, if you want a weekday, nationally televised sellout, have that ball game. All right. Obviously, the optimum place to have that game would have been Huntington, where you're sending Southern Miss back to Marshall. I can understand why you would not do that. All right. It takes one knucklehead to ruin what could be a great time. A lot of hard feelings. There's a ton of hard feelings. You saw that in the comments. If you saw all of the, episodes that we talked about, Charles Huff leaving and the players leaving and all the transfers from Marshall to Southern Miss. And by the way, we talked a lot about the Southern Miss and all the transfers. Tony Gibson's doing a really good job at Marshall. We do need to get back into the portal and kind of recap on what everybody's doing. The Cajuns are getting some more players. South Alabama's been getting some more players. But Tony Gibson has been doing a really good job of refilling the coffers over there at in Huntington. But nonetheless, you would think that you would send Southern Miss back to Huntington. But you can understand why, all right, we don't want to take the chance that something foolish happens. All right. As ridiculous as that sounds, we all know that it's not that ridiculous. One knucklehead could just ruin it for everybody. All right. We saw the fans take it very seriously, call out Charles Huff, call out the players. Apparently, the Marshall players who transferred to Southern Miss took it very seriously and personally. They didn't feel the love for the fans. The fans didn't feel the love for the players. And I know it's very few. I do know that. It's very few. It's a very vocal minority, incredibly small minority. I know most Marshall fans are behind all of the players. But it is a minority, and a loud minority is the problem. And so it only takes one knucklehead to ruin what would be could be a great Tuesday night football game. If you want to make it a Thursday night football game, that's fine. But a Tuesday night football game, you could have a huge crowd and a big buildup for most likely is 10 days from a Saturday to 10 days later, Tuesday. So if you don't want to have it in Huntington, send them to Hattiesburg. And it would be a huge ball game in Hattiesburg. Bring it on. Let's bring down, the defending. It would be funny. It'd be the defending Sun Belt champions, which are actually mostly on Southern Miss, hosting, last year's Sun Belt champion, the Marshall Thundering Herd. It's just a missed opportunity. I'm sure they will answer at the Sun Belt Media Days. Keith Gill will answer that. He might say these things were done way in advance, which is kind of a cop-out. They should have done it, right? It's too easy. It's too juicy. It seems really easy to do. And I just think they missed. They swung and missed. I think the Sun Belt for the most part, has done a fantastic job in Keith Gill's tenure. They do need a better TV deal. They need some better bowl alliances. But overall, let's admit it, that the Sun Belt has been fantastic. They need a little bit better basketball scheduling. Baseball is fantastic. Softball is good. And football has gotten a lot better since the conference has expanded. But this was a swing and a miss. It's too easy to do. And for whatever reason, the Sun Belt decided that Marshall and Southern Miss should not play when they should have. I don't know why they didn't, but they should have. If you don't want to send Southern Miss to Marshall for safety reasons and precautions, that I get. Again, I don't think something would happen, but again, it takes one knucklehead to ruin what could be a fun situation, and just send everybody to Hattiesburg. Everybody would have been safe, most likely, and it just could have been a real great scene in Hattiesburg. Again, bringing the, quote, defending Sun Belt champions down to Hattiesburg to really play against the guys who won the Sun Belt championship or are now playing for Southern Miss. So it just would have been something that those guys who are doing, kind of like the Matt Berries of the world, who are doing those Sun Belt games, something to talk about, right? And last year, I guess, was Dan Mullen a lot, who's now coaching ULD, but Dan Mullen was doing all those Sun Belt games. So I just think the Sun Belt missed. They should have played. They should have had Southern Miss and Marshall play. All right, we will talk about the crossovers coming up. We'll do the West first, of course. Then we'll do the East. And I don't think, from what I looked at, and of course we're doing this based on last year's teams and looking ahead a little bit to this year's, I don't think there's too many of unfair. I don't think there's one, quote, stacked. I guess we'll see. We'll talk it through. All right. We will do that after I tell you about game time. Attending the new 12-team college football playoff games is an incredible experience that brings fans together like never before. I remember the excitement of past playoff games and can't wait to make new memories with the updated format and extra teams involved. Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. Recently, I used Game Time Picks to find tickets for upcoming games. Browsing through the deals was a breeze, and I found great value for all kinds of seats around the venue. The Super Deal, in particular, stood out as the best value for the event. I love that I could see the seat views before buying, and the app shows the total cost up front with no surprise fees at checkout. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me complete peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE, LOCKEDONCollege, for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. All right, Dave Schultz, Locked On College, your teams every day. I will go over the Sun Belt crossovers. Again, it feels even. Again, we're going to base this on names. And again, what we think next year is going to be. Like the Cajuns get Marshall. That's good in name, but we don't know what Marshall's going to be. Again, Tony Gibson's doing a good job of filling the coffers, but we don't know what Marshall is going to be. They're also at JMU. I don't know if the Cajuns have played at JMU. I know South Alabama played at JMU, and that was basically a disaster. I don't know if the Cajuns have played at JMU yet. And so this appears to be in alphabetical order, as it turns out. So Arkansas State, I'm just reading this off of the Sunbelt website. So Arkansas State is getting Georgia Southern coming to Jonesboro and traveling to lovely Boone, North Carolina. They're going to App State. Okay. We'll see if J.C. French is the guy with Georgia Southern. And actually, App State's gotten a couple of quarterbacks. So we'll see who is the starter for App State moving forward. But again, Arkansas State should be the preseason favorite, them or South, heading into 2025. Cajuns, they get Marshall. And Marshall is going to be a wild card. We just have no idea. And this is, I believe, Tony Gibson's first year as a head coach. So that's also a wild card. And they get JMU, who is, let's be honest, they're kind of reloading, right? All the guys that transferred out, for 2024 from Indiana, and all the guys that are, have used up all their eligibility as well. All those guys that Kurt Cignetti brought in and have had a great career there, their time is about up. So we don't know about JMU. ULM actually just got Braylon McReynolds. He transferred from South Alabama, running back local to Mobile. I think he's got a couple of years left. I didn't think it was that many, but I think he's got a couple of years left. ULM gets ODU, and they're going to Coastal Carolina. ODU, they got to step up this year. This is going to be Colton Joseph's year, and we'll see, because I think Ricky Ronnie's going to be on the hot seat going into this season, and we'll see what Tim Beck does at quarterback for Coastal Carolina. South Alabama, they along with Arkansas State will be favorites in the West. They get Coastal, and they're at Georgia State. Now, Georgia State, we've talked about this. When you get that good recruiting class, and they've gotten some transfers in, but just because you get the good recruiting class, that's not going to translate to on the field. The good recruiting class is going to take a couple of years, as it did for, say, Butch Jones. All right, Butch Jones took Butch Jones 3 seasons to get to a bowl game. It took 4 seasons for Butch Jones to win the bowl game. He got some really good recruiting classes in his first 2 seasons at Arkansas State. Del McGee has the number 1 recruiting class, or depending on what day it is, first or second recruiting class in the Sun Belt, which is great. But that recruiting class is going to take a year or 2 to get going. And they just could never build upon their win over Vanderbilt. So we'll see what happens. Quarterback wise, And, if they can, and I think they're changing their coaches, new coordinators. Yeah, he's not, last year was not good enough. And Del McGee is making that a point of saying so. So we'll see for next season. But as it goes, those two games are not all that difficult for South Alabama. The sooner you play Georgia State, the better, is what I would say. The later that goes, the better off that I would think that Georgia State's going to be. We'll see. Of course, you got Southern Miss. Southern Miss could be the good one. We'll see. People are looking at their record and think that Charles Huff isn't going to do a good job. A lot of those guys from Marshall are coming down, including the quarterback. We know who the quarterback is going to be at Southern Miss, and he's got a lot of good players coming with him. So I think that Southern Miss is going to be pretty good next year. They'll host App, and they're going to Georgia Southern. They're going to Statesboro. I think Southern Miss is going to be in that next level, right behind Arkansas State and South Alabama. In fact, they could be right ahead of the Cajuns. I think they're right there with Texas State, right? As soon as we figured out what Texas State's going to be doing at quarterback, we could find out that, in fact, I think Southern Miss is ahead of Texas State because we know what Southern Miss is going to be doing at quarterback. So I think they're going to be in good shape. Speaking of Texas State, they get JMU and Marshall. Again, the same thing that the Cajuns are doing. That seems a little bit odd. It's a little reversed. Texas State is hosting JMU, and they are going to Marshall. So Cajuns do host Marshall, so that is a rematch of the Sun Belt Championship, which is kind of cool, but obviously new coach and a ton of different players for Marshall. Troy hosting Georgia State, and they go to ODU. Now, there's two are the same in the West. We'll see if that's in the East. I thought there were more that had the same in the East. Same two teams. We'll see if they are the same in the East. Maybe it's just the Cajuns and Texas State was the thing. All right. Let's take a time out. We'll go and check out the scheduling crossovers for the East, the Sun Belt East crew, right after I tell you about Wayfair. After the holiday hustle, there's nothing like giving your home a little TLC. I always find that decluttering and refreshing my space helps me get back into a routine. Whether you're tidying up, clearing out, or just want to give your space a new look to start the year, Wayfair has everything you need, all within your budget. I'm currently looking for furniture, and their huge selection makes it easy to find pieces that fit my budget and style. My favorite part, the free and basic hassle-free delivery, even for larger items. Wayfair's site was so easy to navigate, and I found everything I need in no time. Just to let you know, let's see if we get the shoulder right. I didn't. That's Wayfair, that shelving unit. And I'm not going to show you the desk that the computer is on is also from Wayfair. There's something for every style and every home, no matter your space or budget. And Wayfair makes it easy to tackle your New Year home goals with endless inspiration for every space. Give your home the refresh it needs with Wayfair. Head to wayfair.com right now. That's WAYFAIR.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Dave Schultz, Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. All right, we're doing scheduling crossovers. Again, love to hear your comments. I just think that the Sunbelt messed up with the opportunity to schedule Marshall and Southern Miss. If you don't want to send Southern Miss to Huntington, I get it. Send Marshall down to Southern Miss. It would have been a huge crowd. Easy peasy. All right. All right, let's check out the crossovers for the East. App State getting App State is getting Arkansas State and Southern Miss. So they're going to Jonesboro and Hattiesburg. That'll be a lot of black and gold in Hattiesburg at one time. And you got a new coach with App State. So we'll see what's going on there. They've actually got some players as well. I think I got a couple of quarterbacks who have transferred in. So we'll see that. And again, I will say I have, again, reached out to all of the SIDs multiple times. I have, can I tell you on a side note, I don't get weekends off anymore. So it's very hard to keep track of the days of the week. All right. And I also usually do not get 2 days off in a row. So I rarely work 5 days in a row. It just so happens, like beginning next, I get Thursday off again. And so then I work 5 days in a row, and I'm complaining about that. Not really, but I brought it up to somebody, and it's like, well, I always work 5 days in a row. And in baseball season, when I was working in sports talk, I'd work 7 in a row if the Cajuns were at home. So it is going to be a little bit difficult unless we could do it in the evening after I get home. And these college football coaches are working all kinds of hours, so they may not have an issue. Point is, hopefully, somewhere along the way, these guys will get back to me, and can only bother them so much. But I'm still trying to get all of the coaches. Hopefully, once they've settled in. Point is, I have a Thursday off. Maybe I'll reach out again just to say, hey, I have Thursday off. And then, I don't know, my next couple of days off are on a weekend, which I'm happy to do it then. But just saying, I have reached out to all of the coaches. Haven't gotten any, but we're still going to try. All right. But sorry, got sidetracked. I just wanted to, and I'm not just going after Charles Huff or Tony Gibson. I'm going after all of them, obviously. All right. So App State, Arkansas State, and Southern Miss. Coastal hosting ULM, and they are going to South Alabama. I'd be interested to know if Coastal's ever gone to South Alabama. I don't know if they have. That'll be interesting. All right. Georgia Southern going to Hattiesburg and to Jonesboro. That may not be easy. That may be one of the tougher ones. As again, I think Arkansas State is going to be the preseason favorite in the West, and I do happen to think that Southern Miss is still going to be pretty good. All right. Georgia State, I don't think this is going to be easy either. They're going to South. They're going to South Alabama, and they're going to Troy. Excuse me. I think Troy, by the end of the season, was one of the most improved teams by the end of the year. And we'll see what happens. I think, again, last year, you guys know I am a much more of a reasons guy than an excuses guy. And Troy was down as QB number 3. All right. And there were many more injuries than just quarterbacks. So we'll see what Jared Parker has for season number 2. All right. And I would expect much more out of Troy than what we saw in 2024. All right. We mentioned JMU and Marshall each have the Ragin Cajuns in Texas State. JMU hosts the Cajuns and goes to Texas State. Marshall hosts Texas State and goes back to Lafayette to play the Cajuns, a rematch in the Sun Belt Conference championship game. And I guess that is it. For some reason, I saw it written down, and I thought there was more than 2 schools with the same matchup. So really, it is only, no, I guess it's 4 schools. I guess it is JMU, Marshall. All right. JMU, Marshall, Texas State, and the Cajuns. Super genius. Sometimes I just have to be hit over the head. Okay. So I was right. So there's 2 in the West and 2 in the East. Okay. Duh. Still doesn't explain Southern Miss and Marshall. And ODU taking on Troy, hosting Troy, and going to ULM. All right. So last year, if you gave me this, I would have said, JMU and Marshall, those are tough matchups, right? Tough matchups, but kind of even because I didn't know about Marshall. I think I picked them 5th, right? I mean, I don't think anybody had Marshall winning the division. Meanwhile, the conference, and I think we all had JMU pretty high. I don't think I had him winning the division. But I think we would have had, I certainly had Texas State winning the division in the West. So we would have thought those were good matchups, kind of even. But otherwise, I think, Georgia Southern is probably going to be pretty good. They're always pretty good. They're never great. We'll see what happens in Logain's first year at App State, right? We'll see if Tim Beck can get anything going at Coastal. Couldn't build on year 1 when he finished up strong. Couldn't get that QB going. And kind of like Will Hall, you got to get that QB. When you see that QB going, we'll see. I think that's the big thing for Georgia Southern. Got to stop throwing those interceptions. Oh, my goodness. See the amount of interceptions being thrown when, that's the big thing. It's not even poor throws. It's poor decisions. That's the Clay Helton offense. It's not bad throws necessarily. It's where you're throwing it to. And I remember I just remember when again, Levi Lewis and the Cajuns, like, they didn't turn the ball over. I don't think they had a turnover in like their last 7-8 ball games. And a lot of those were 1-score games. Like, they were good, but they weren't great. I think they went 13-1, but they won a lot of 1-score games in that year, right? Scared money don't make money. They won a lot of games late and close. And Georgia Southern, go back and look at all those 1-score games they lost and see how many interceptions and how many turnovers they had. And you just got to eliminate those by half, right? If you eliminate them by a third, you'd win a lot more ball games, right? And it doesn't, again, not inventing football here. You got to cut down on those interceptions, right? The point is, you get that quarterback right, you can start winning football games. And that's why I'm looking at, Southern Miss with Braylon Braxton, all right, leading Marshall to a Sun Belt championship. Jaylen Raynor at Arkansas State. Gio Lopez at Southern Miss. We'll see how Walker Howard does. I'm going to screw that name up a lot, all right? With the Cajuns. We'll figure out who the other quarterbacks are. And we'll have to go through, the East and all their quarterbacks. But you get that quarterback right, and that's just, not only do you have to get the first quarterback right, but as the Cajuns have proved, you got to get the second quarterback right. If they don't have Chandler Fields this year, the season goes off the rails, right? Chandler Fields saves the season because Ben Wooldridge goes down. They did lose the ball game to South Alabama that Ben got hurt in. Now, they almost won that ball game. Chandler brought them back and almost won the game. But the only other game they lost, other than the Tulane game, they lost the Sun Belt Championship. But so they lost Tulane, and they lost the game that Ben Wooldridge got hurt in, and then they lost the Sun Belt Championship game because Chandler got hurt in. So all the coaches will tell you, you got to have at least 2 quarterbacks, but you got to get the starter right, and everybody knows you got to get that second one. You got to have somebody ready to go. If you don't have the first one, it's tough to get that second one. And Will Hall just couldn't find that quarterback. Couldn't get that quarterback. Butch Jones got the quarterback. I think South Alabama's had the quarterback. I think they're heading into year, to be honest with you, they went from Bentley to Bradley for 2 years, and now Gio Lopez for 2 years. They could have Gio Lopez for 3 years. They'd be in good shape. So, and Jaylen Raynor could be there for 3 years. Walker Howard could be there for a couple years. And depending on what the NCAA does, he could be there for 3 years. Now, you get that quarterback right, that allows you to really concentrate on the other positions and not focus on what we all focus on is the quarterback. So get that right, and it makes everything else a lot smoother. All right. Thanks very much for tuning in. We will actually preview Wednesday basketball. We got 3 games on Wednesday. We got 4 on Thursday. We will look to those for tomorrow's episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to Locked On Sunbelt, your teams every day. Have a great Tuesday, everybody. We'll be back on a Wednesday.